Hey everybody, how's it going? So this is Life, and Chisa just got announced. Well, not so much announced, but her drip marketing, and there's a lot of details that I'm gonna be honest, nobody's probably gonna be calling them out. So I'm gonna be the one to let you all know what's going on. Um, I think it is first important that we just start with she looks amazing. The biggest detail, and nobody missed this one. She looks awesome, right? She kind of looks a little bit taller than I thought. Maybe it's the artwork, maybe it's like the angle. I guess I was thinking she was be like kind of like Carlotta's height, but she almost looks like, I don't know, like Chacona's height or something like that in this one. So, who knows? Weapon looks amazing. It's kind of got like the inches and centimeters thing going on. Basically, it just looks like a giant scissor. Let's be honest, it looks similar to like Kill la Kill or a Kami ga Kill, right? But let's also be honest, she's probably a rectifier user, and we're going to see that weapon like 2 times. So, hey, it is what it is. But in terms of why there's the little centimeters and inches thing, we'll learn that in a little bit. But like I said, we'll go first where they tell us about her as a character, right here. And we'll just go from there. So, post-limit Anthropocene stars intertwined. I will sever this deadlock. Chisa. Archive. Chisa is a conscientious, level-headed student from the Star Torch Academy. To her, everything can be broken down, analyzed, and resolved, with the exception of human bonding. Bonds can be severed, but this fragility is what makes them precious. So, I'm thinking based on like that second line, it's probably just, or the later half of it, it's basically just saying, human bonds are not so formulaic, I guess you could say. She's a student, which is very interesting because it tells us a lot about the new place we're going to be going to, right? So as we can all see, like we got these buildings in the background. I'm so excited. Listen, Renacita was amazing. Enjoyed it thoroughly. But I am so excited to see a city. Like, oh man, I don't know, man. It's just something about it. Like within the Wuthering Waves world, we're kind of getting back to those like sci-fi roots. So I'm super excited. You can see actually like some trees down here. I don't know if this is like snow or if it's just like a filter with fog, but like I said, it looks amazing. And like I said, Star Torch Academy. We're going to get into that in a second as to why that is important. But before I do that, I want to start with the most appropriate thing that we're going to look at. We're going to start here and then go around, right? And I'm intentionally talking about starting there and going around because, as you can see, this paper right here has something on it. And the something is, boom, the golden ratio. So for those who don't know what the golden ratio is, it is pleasing proportions found in nature, right? It was put together by this thing called the Fibonacci sequence. And this is essentially like if you took the Fibonacci sequence to its limits, you end up with the golden ratio. You can see at the bottom, it says nature, architecture, and art. These are just like this way of looking at things that's considered like very pleasing. It's kind of like you start here and then you move out from there. Even like with YouTube, some people would make thumbnails based on this concept. So that already is like a really cool detail. They said we know she's a student, so she's probably really smart. And it's, you can see all these papers around. So really exciting to kind of see that. Going forward, we see, like I said, we start here, we move out. Obviously, like I said, the cityscape looks amazing. Now we're getting to this thing right here. So this lovely red herring or black herring, whatever you want to call it, in the sky, it looks very much like the black hole that we saw in the port city of Guishu. The black hole was essentially the form that the Lament took when it attacked the port city of Guishu. It is currently a necrostar because the Tethys system essentially contained the black hole. And we learned that, the Tethys system is basically using that necrostar to simulate, to basically run experiments on it. And it's simulating that event over and over again, multiple times to learn things. We also learned that the frequencies of the people who were a part of that, those frequencies are kind of getting tortured in a lot of ways because they're basically just having to replay that situation. Tells you a lot about the Tethys system. With that being said, yeah, this is totally normal. This is totally normal. yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with that, right? And then lastly, we have this symbol right here. Now, this symbol usually, says, "I will sever the deadlock." That those words alone is just like, what was that supposed to mean exactly? What's the deadlock and what is she severing? But I think this idea of sever obviously is like cutting. But the fact that she pauses a little bit, like it kind of gives it more emphasis, more oomph. And so this symbol right here is the Star Torch Academy symbol, I'm pretty sure. Now, Star Torch Academy, that's a very new term. What are we thinking about? Well, we're thinking about this. We are thinking about the Huashu Academy, right? This might be an awesome opportunity for us to see more of Mortefi, Shang Liao, right? Baisha. So we might get to see them again before we head on to what looks to be another academy. And one of the things about it that I noticed that's pretty interesting is the fact that we can see, like I said, a DNA strand, right? So Star Torch Academy. So we know it's an academy, but what does this term Star Torch have to do with anything? Well, we consider the fact, we have this city backdrop, right? It looks really cool. And we know in the finale that Galbrena gave us what was considered like a piece of rare technology, but it was also kind of like a more modern, or pseudo modern piece of technology, or at the very least, something that looks similar to this cityscape. It was kind of like a Walkman from like the early 2000s or the 90s, right? And it had a cassette tape, and the place was called Lahai Roi. Okay. Now, the name Lahai Roi is a biblical term. It's a Hebrew, and the full name is Bir Lahai Roi. And essentially that means the God who sees me. You are the God who sees me, or I have now seen the one who sees me, right? And so why is this important? Well, this is based on the story of Hagar. Hagar was in just a really bad situation, and she met God basically at a spring in the desert, right? You could think like an oasis even, perhaps. And in this, throughout this process, God comforts her. And so it says Bir Lahai Roi. It's still there today between Kadesh and Bered, this place. And so in the context of Wuthering Waves, you have, the God who sees me. What is that supposed to mean for the area, right? A place where God, they're being seen by God, right? One of the other interesting things about it is this. So Star Torch. So when I think about, Lahai Roi, right? Hebrew name. And then you have Star Torch Academy. The thing that I think about when I break those two things up is star. And if you all remember, those who have been playing the game for a while, or at the very least, if you pay attention to like the trailers that they put on their main channel, there was this one trailer that we heard the song for. It was actually in the opening sequence for the game when the game was first put out. The login screen had a song called Saving Light, and there was a trailer for it. It was really awesome, and we actually heard it again in the finale. And during that song, we saw, or either during the finale, we saw Galbrena kind of give Rover like a flame when Rover was in their mindscape, basically. And that speech that she kind of gave was something that pointed us to this idea of like, Rover kind of being like a saving light, and also kind of like a guiding light. So star, torch. We think about like a star, like something in the sky, and a torch. I'm thinking personally, it reminds me of the story in the Bible where the three wise men were they were following the star in the sky to find baby Jesus. And so that star that was in the sky was kind of like a torch. Now, one of the reasons why this is interesting is because if you didn't see my last video, which is a lore video that I did, yeah, I do lore, obviously. And I would highly encourage you to watch it if you have not watched it. I have a whole playlist, check it out. But in that video, we discussed the concept that the people, one of the big themes, overarching themes of Wuthering Waves is this idea of wanting to get to the stars. And so this idea of Star Torch, like, you're basically telling us that Star Torch Academy specifically, it's kind of like the Academy is operating as a guiding light for humanity, right? Civilization. And specifically, you see this DNA strand, right? So it kind of makes me think like maybe their whole goal is to try to understand themselves, maybe even because we know that when the lament hit, everything turned into frequencies. I talked about that in my beginner's guide to Wuthering Waves lore. As I said, I have a whole playlist. Check it out. And so we have the beginner's guide talking, kind of going into that information. But yeah, everything was turned into frequencies. My condolences if you missed 1.2 where we saw Sheng Liao's quest. Like I said, a torch is meant to light up the way in a dark place, and the scientific community for Soul 3 is kind of in a dark place, and you would have seen that with Sheng Liao's quest during the festival in 1.2. But you know, I'm sure they'll do a decent job of explaining that beforehand, just kind of like the state of things with science in Soul 3. So yes, like I said, when I think about Star Torch, I'm thinking about like this concept of the star that was in the sky to kind of like light the way for people. So last but not least, certainly not least, we have this little video they showed us. Chisa sees weaknesses in the form of threads, and this goes to this, you know, weapon that she has with this essentially like scissors, right, cutting threads. She sees weaknesses in the form of threads. Upon analyzing the structure of an observed target, she identifies and then severs the enemy's weak threads. This sounds like Demon Slayer, unraveling their structural integrity in one sharp cut from the scissors in her hands. Now, I don't look at leaks, but something like the idea of, you know, seeing an opponent's weakness and essentially unraveling it, you know, identify, sever, to me that kind of just sounds like she's able to find a weakness and then maybe exploit it. So maybe she has something along the lines of like a debuff ability. That would be pretty cool. The music is so good. Just listen. Oh my gosh. It sounds like fighting game music, and oh my gosh. She looks amazing. You know, there's it's like a beauty and simplicity, honestly. You also notice like, you know, like her outfit is relatively simple in nature, right? But even you can see right here like these little, what I'd say kind of like threads on, I guess, the scarf, ribbon, scarf, ascotch, some. Also you see this like neck collar thing. That's, so I don't know, it's shining and it's shining red, so it doesn't seem like that's just like a light shining. Maybe that's a device. It's kind of concerning, to be honest with you. What could this device entail? We'll have to find out. But even though her design is kind of, you know, simple, I guess, you know, let's be honest, she looks like a Japanese schoolgirl. But I don't know, man, it's just something about the way that they definitely made sure to make it look unique. And yeah, she's definitely hitting those marks. I do think it's, once again, interesting that, you know, this is a smaller condensed version of the picture. It's moving, but they made sure to keep this golden ratio thing in there, so that'll be interesting for the future. Also, I will say this other interesting little detail that I noticed at the very end, and you all tell me, is that a neutron star? Well, with all that being said, you all let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments below.
Hey, you. Do the thing.